Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so for assault, let's say, or robbery or assault, for assault, it's around 51 minutes.
Wow. Okay.
Right now.
Then I would change my response to the first question.
Welcome to the Seiji Bard podcast. I'm Seiji.
Hey, and I'm Bard. We have a scenario for you. It's the middle of the night. You hear a noise. You open your door slightly just so you can take a look outside, and you notice a man holding a weapon. He's kind of a little bit far away, right? What do you do? What's your next move? Well, this is what we're going to be talking about in our show today. We did some interviews. You'll see those later on, so stay tuned for that. We also have some statistics on some very interesting statistics here in San Diego. Well, in San Diego from where we filmed part of the interviews. So we want to get right into it. What would you do? What would you do in this situation? But before that, we're going to go ahead and show you one or two of our interviews that we did. All right? Watch this. Scenario, you're at home alone and you hear a noise in the middle of the night. What do you do?
I get up to look to see what it is.
Okay, someone's in the house. Now what?
What would I do? I would probably be very quiet and think about where my phone was, and I would call 911.
Call 911? Okay. I want to read something for you really quickly. In San Diego, what do you think the response times are for 911?
I've called 911 before for a medical emergency. It was very fast.
Okay, so for a medical emergency, all right, that's one thing. That's true.
I've never called it for a danger.
For anything else? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so for assault, let's say, or robbery or assault, for assault, it's around 51 minutes.
Wow. Okay.
Right now.
Then I would change my response to the first question.
What do you think would be the most logical?
Try to get the hell out of my house.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. How do you feel we're actually talking about safety? When we call 911, we're calling people who are coming to protect us, but as you can see here, they may not get here on time.
Yeah.
And these guys have guns, right?
Yeah.
So what if the bad guy has guns? Obviously, getting out of the house is the best.
I would still try to get out of the house.
Try to get out of the house. How do you feel about people being able to protect themselves?
With a gun?
With gun, whatever.
I think the average person can't do it.
What do you think? Like training would be? What do you think would be a good?
I took my husband and I and our teenage daughter actually took a gun safety class recently because we were interested in it. And what I came away thinking is it's ridiculous to think the average person could protect themselves with a gun in their home. If you're going to store it safely, locked up with the ammunition and the gun separate,
that's pretty ridiculous.
You would never be able to put it together in time to protect yourself. And it's actually a lot harder to use a gun than I thought.
All right, so we just showed you a woman who, in her interview, she was very, very hesitant about wanting to actually grab a firearm. So what do you think about that?
Well, it was also interesting with her because she felt, even though she had had some gun training, she was worried about using the gun safely under pressure.
It's actually a lot harder to use a gun than I thought.
It is, especially...
If I didn't practice all the time, I wouldn't trust myself to be able to protect myself with it in an emergency. Especially if I were terrified, I would...
What's interesting, if you talk to... I've never really heard that perspective. And typically people who have guns will practice with the gun. They'll go and practice till they become competent. That's kind of the way things work, right? I don't think everyone has to have a gun. I think it's something people should consider because it's their right to, and I think it makes the most sense in certain situations because bad guys have guns. What if you call the police? Now here's the thing, let's go through some logical traps. There's some people who are against firearms, and that's totally, if that's your thing, okay, fine. But then you're going to call a police officer who's going to come with a firearm. What do you think about that? Does that make sense to you?
I think it's kind of hypocritical in a lot of ways, but I think it's the same as politicians who are trying to disarm Americans and they have
They have
security
guns.
guards that have weapons.
They have security guards that have weapons.
That doesn't make any sense to me because ultimately I look at it through the lens of the Second Amendment, and I also further look at it from the vantage point of I'm responsible for myself.
Right.
Ultimate responsibility for what happens with me is up to me.
Right, right.
And I will do whatever I can to make sure that I'm safe.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, I think people allow their politics. See, the thing is like, the Constitution is for us. It's for everyone.
Correct.
It's not left or right or center. I don't like that people try to, because I'm on this side of the political fence, sort of like push myself away from certain amendments.
Well, I think
They're for everyone.
Ultimately, what you're saying is, whether you're on the right or on the left, you are responsible for your own safety. Personal responsibility in today's world is what we've been progressively giving up.
Right. I think not only are you responsible for your own safety, but you have a right. That's the important part. You have a right. No politician, no one should try to influence you in your choices. You have a right to protect yourself and your family. If you're going to call 911 and they're going to show up with guns, you have to understand, we were actually showing people, I actually had this on my phone. I'll show you guys just real quick. When we're doing the interviews, in case you missed what I said in the interview, for instance, in San Diego, there's a little document here. I think I got this from a Democratic source, if that matters to you guys. But in 2022, so last year, this is 2023, just the robbery and assault, we're gonna use that for robbery. We're gonna consider that, let's consider it home. You're at home, like the first example we gave, or you're at a store. Let's say you own a business and you're in your business. The 911 response times in San Diego, and I encourage you guys, check your times in your cities and then put it in the comments. Let us know. I'm actually curious. We haven't actually done the research on that. But for robbery, the response times from the police in 2021 were about 17 or 18 minutes, right? About 17 minutes. Now, which one of you can wait 17 minutes for the police to show up while you're being robbed? And what we were asking people is, does this make any sense? And people were, as you'll see in some other interviews, some people were like, no, this doesn't make any sense. And I think the thing is that we've sort of been conditioned to think 911 is going to show up right away. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that it's a lie that is being fed to us, so people believe it. Most of the people that we interviewed believe that police were going to show up within 3 to 5 minutes of their phone call. And the statistics, at least for San Diego, do not indicate that you're going to have any support within even 15 minutes of your phone call.
Let me look at the stats from 2018. Now, we can't physically go back in time, so it really doesn't matter. But what I want to show you is how 911 times can change. And then right after this, I want to show you guys another interview. We're going to show you the interview of the guy who, kind of the built guy. Mm-hmm. We'll show you that interview. We'll show you that in a second for another perspective. But in 2018, the response times were just under 10 minutes, so about 8 minutes, which is still a very long time. But it's not unreasonable, but it's still a very long time to be dealing with a predator who's outside of your home trying to get in, or who's inside. It's a long time. Now, I would be a huge fan of the 911 system if they could get there in a minute or two. 2 minutes tops, I think that might be a little bit more reasonable, right? You have a better chance of survival. I mean, you jump in any time.
But ultimately, it would be reasonable to surrender your rights if the government could show up within 2 minutes to protect you. But that is also virtually impossible. From the time you initiate a phone call to someone being at your door to help you. And, this all falls within the framework, Bart, of the Second Amendment. And I think that that's something that I always want to go back to in terms of what our rights are. And this Second Amendment falls under the Bill of Rights, which historically was a document. The Bill of Rights were the first 10 amendments to the U.S. Constitution, which were basically required by different states. So then the states said, we will not ever form these United States unless these terms are agreed to in perpetuity. And those are important because we need to provide for individual rights and to, number two, limit the power of the government. So I want you to realize that the Bill of Rights, the Second Amendment, falls into the Bill of Rights, was put in place for two reasons: to protect individual rights and to limit the power of government.
Now let me go back to this real quick. That's people, and from what you're saying, it seems like politicians are trying to undo that agreement that the states wanted to create the United States. It seems like they're trying to roll back the time in terms of some states want to have it this way, some states want to have it this way. Florida just rolled out a pretty drastic anyone can carry, concealed, no license, no nothing. Now that may excite some people, that may terrify some people. I don't really know where most people would fall in that, but the main thing to keep in mind is that criminals don't keep laws. That's why they are considered criminals. It doesn't matter what law you make. Criminals have been concealed carrying from the beginning, regardless of your laws. So that's the one variable in this equation that we got to keep in mind.
Correct.
Criminals are going to do whatever they want to do, whenever they want to do. That's what makes them unique as people. They're criminals.
And one of the reasons the Second Amendment exists is to protect individuals from criminals. I mean, and that's where it says, Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And when we put this into the historical context, not only is it for you to protect your own individual rights and safety from a criminal, but it's also to potentially be able to overthrow the government.
If needed, yeah. And
historically speaking, that's why it was there.
Right. And, the thing is you made a really good point about the Second Amendment and why it's there. The crafters, the founders of the Second Amendment, they instilled in the rationale for that amendment includes the notion that crime and tyranny are an ever-present threat.
Correct.
Those will never be removed. So I think when we're talking about this, you have to understand that these things will never go away. So once we have that on the table, then we can begin the discussion. Crime will always be here. We can never have enough police. We can't hire that many police that can show up everywhere, right? So I think that's a huge consideration.
One of the other things to note, and I think that Mel Gibson put this succinctly in The Patriot, he said, what is the difference between trading one tyrant 3,000 miles away for 3,000 tyrants 1 mile away? And that was what was on the mindset of the founding fathers. And that's why they put these provisions in for our protections for the future. So when we're looking at this, we can ask this question because, with all of the school shootings, all of the mass murders all over the place, the question is, do guns kill people? Okay? And I know this is kind of a funny way of looking at it, but let's look at just a short video from one of my favorite shows, American Dad. And this is Stan Smith with Do Guns Kill People?
All right, let's take a look. We'll be right back in a second.
Oh, guns kill. Is that right? Well, let's see about that. Okay, gun, kill. Go ahead, kill someone. Don't be shy. See? Guns don't kill people. People kill people. Guns defend people against people with smaller guns.
Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed that little segment, and it is a little humorous, at least it is to me. But the point is, guns don't kill people. People kill people. Of course, unless it's Alec Baldwin's gun. In that case, it managed to fire itself.
And you know what? I stand behind Alec Baldwin because obviously it's too dangerous to stand in front of him. Because I think this is also relevant. I'm still looking at this chart here. There's I don't know if you guys can see this orange line right here. This is the difference in 911 responses for assault in San Diego. Let me give you the numbers behind that. You can't see the actual numbers. This is between 2018 and 2023. So in 2023, being the orange line, let me zoom in on that. That's the orange line, 2023. 2018 is the other. So the responses are getting slower. So this should help you in understanding that you really can't count on people. You have to defend yourself. For assault, the police, it takes them right now in San Diego about 52 minutes to show up. Okay, so
that's a long time.
It's a really long time. You could actually get in your car, go to the store, get something, and come back.
Got to finish that donut and coffee before heading out.
Right? That's a long time. So, guys, keeping that in mind, put in the comments, what do you think? Do you think this is reasonable? Does this change your calculus? Does this change how you think about things? This changes how I think about things. I didn't know this before we set out to do this show. So one of the things I want to do, can we ask the audience a few questions? I want to get your guys' comments on this. Let me ask you this, because politicians are kind of making laws, and like we said in the beginning, it doesn't really matter what side of the fence you're on. The amendments are for us, people, Americans. That's it. Okay, they're for us. Do you have a right to defend yourself from an attacker? Because there are some states, I've seen this, and maybe you guys have seen this.
Well, in California, not even some states, in California.
Tell me about
where
California.
we are. Do you have the right to defend yourself? A lot of people would say, I'm not sure anymore because I have to call the police. You have someone in your house, if they get injured, they're not dead, they might sue you.
They can sue you, which is...
It's ludicrous. That's what it is.
Which is ridiculous. Guys, you've seen stories where burglars will break into someone's house, slip on a Hot Wheel, injure themselves, and then end up suing you. And they say, I know in this state, because I did some training in this state, some firearm training, if you shoot someone in your house, you better make sure you kill them with that shot while they're standing. You better make sure it looks like you killed them because they were coming in and you were fearing for your life. Because if they find out you shot them when they were on the ground, you're going to get charged with murder. In this state of California, you will get charged with murder.
Which is ridiculous.
Which is crazy because, I mean...
If someone is in your house and they're not invited, they should be removed from your house.
They're not there and in a body bag. They're not there to play Connect Four with you guys.
No.
I mean, unless it's Connect Four this way.
Well,
One, two, three,
and
four.
we're looking at this, just so you understand, at least for San Diego, because that's where we were looking at. And again, we encourage each of you to look into 911 response times in your area.
Right.
But the priority one call out, the time that they're striving for in San Diego is 14 minutes. There's a lot of things that can happen in 14 minutes. And if they hit 14 minutes, they're feeling pretty good about it. Now,
but see, the thing is the police have their guns with them. So if anything happens, they can pull their guns right away. They're not worried about 14 minutes. That's for us, the peons. They're trying to make it seem, it's almost like they're trying to legitimize their departments, right?
Well, one of the really tragic
why
things when we're looking at this and the dependence of people on law enforcement in a society that is now, in a lot of ways, actively trying to defund law enforcement, is listening to 911 calls with people on the phone with 911 while they're getting murdered. And that's tragic. It's heartbreaking.
Let's do this. We're gonna watch a clip real quick. I want to show you what this guy says. We'll get into this clip. We'll see what his response is when we ask him what would he do in this scenario? You're at home, middle of the night, you hear a noise, crack the door out from your bedroom, you go look outside, you see someone in your house downstairs, right? And you see that they might be armed. Maybe they have a gun. What's your move?
I get my gun.
You get your gun, okay.
Yeah, shoot to kill.
Shoot to kill. All right, let me show you something real quick. Would you even call 911? Would you even bother with 911? Maybe after
You have
after
split.
body
You
him?
have seconds. You have seconds to make a decision, and I'm not a gun expert. I know my basic fair share on safety and defending myself, but a gun beats a knife any day.
Any day. How long do you
If
think
I have to defend myself and my family, yeah, I'd like to live.
I hear you. What do you think the average 911 time is for a call like this?
City of San Diego.
City of San Diego, yeah. Let's call it an assault.
I live in
call.
La Mesa. I live
Okay.
in La Mesa, and our police force, I believe, is pretty well funded. I don't have stats to back that up.
Okay.
But for violent crime, I'm guessing it's 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay. So
I'm hoping it's 60 to 90 seconds.
that'd be great, right?
But still, something's already happened in that time frame.
Yeah,
So they're there to do cleanup.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So let me show you this. This is Orange is 2022 for robbery. It's almost 20 minutes. For assault, it's a little over 50 minutes.
For active robbery, not a robbery that's happened.
For active robbery, it's about 17 minutes.
Okay, so it looks like it's all gone up by about
Assault,
20%.
yeah, robberies, assault, and in progress domestic violence. So it's gone up a lot since 2018. Since 2018.
There's 28.
So 2018, you can see it's under 10 minutes,
2018 versus
which is
2022.
pretty standard. Like I would say in most cities, it's probably 4 to 8 minutes, something like that.
Okay.
But you're a gun owner, so you get it. You understand having your own. Why do you think it's important to have your own?
I don't want to ever have to use it, but if I need to, it's just what is available to me to defend myself and my family.
All right, guys, welcome back. You just saw the clip of the guy that we interviewed who was all about his firearms. And I think there tends to be a different response. I kind of had an idea he would say that because he was kind of built. He was muscular. Guys like that, from what I understand, especially if they have a certain type of politics, they're not playing around. They're not going to rely on the police. They want to make it. They want to stay alive. They're not going to be victims.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily. They don't necessarily have to be.
Well,
buff
that's
or
actually,
whatever.
you bring up a really good point. You know, we live in a victim society right now, and it's easier to not be responsible for yourself.
That's true.
Like,
and
I was
yeah.
I was an innocent victim, and you know what? You are innocent, but you're responsible for taking care of yourself, and it's a God-given right and duty to do that.
You have to take care of yourself. All right, so what we're going to do now, want to talk to you real quick about some of the responses I've heard in some debates and arguments just on TV and online. There was and then we're gonna get into another clip. We want to show you how one woman overcame 3 attackers. Okay, check this out. But before we get into the clip, I've heard women say that women think a lot differently from men do, and I think the number one reason is because of their strength, their physical strength. I think they're much more likely to choose a different type of dwelling place, a home, and they're more concerned about safety. Some women I've talked to and I've heard talk about the topic, they prefer to live in an apartment building that has a doorman, security at the gate downstairs. They're much more likely to want to live in a gated community, that sort of stuff.
That makes total sense. I would
Yeah.
never have thought about it.
Yeah, they're much more likely to do that, especially if, they don't have a firearm or if they don't feel comfortable. They're also more likely to have a big dog. Remember that lady that mentioned having a dog?
Well, the fact is, women are, according to different studies, about 2 to 3 times weaker than men.
Yeah.
And that makes for comparatively easy targets.
Right. They are
relative
victims.
to their male counterparts.
Right. They definitely are victims. And I think on the flip side, a lot of guys, may, I think I think it's split down the middle. Some guys, depending on if they, if they work out or not, a guy had a friend who we used to like martial arts, right? He was like, why am I gonna? I'm not gonna fight you. I'm just gonna. I'm gonna get someone to do it for me, or I'll just have a gun. So they start to think rationally. What about you? What do you?
There's this famous scene in Indiana Jones. I don't know if you ever liked those movies, but I always found it hilarious because there's a scene where this guy is either a huge hulking dude has a whip or some type of hand weapon, and Indiana Jones is thinking about fighting him. Then he realizes he has a gun. He just pulls out the gun and then shoots him, and then it's over.
Exactly. It's the great equalizer.
Yeah. It's a great equalizer. And then later on, when they were asking Harrison Ford about that scene, he said, you know what? We actually had this whole fight planned out, but that day I was really sick, and I couldn't do anything.
It was ad-libbed?
So I just said, you know what? We're just going to pull out the gun and do it that way. And that is a funny way of looking at it. But the great equalizer,
it's real life.
The great equalizer, it doesn't matter how much you work out.
It's real life. It represents real life.
A 9mm is probably going to stop you.
Yeah, it's real life. And this is what we're trying to show you. It's like the last guy, he's just being realistic, like you don't know what that person's holding. And here's what I'm saying. If you think like how the police think, the police, when they go into situations, they're ready for anything. They have their firearms pulled.
Yeah.
They have guns because they know there are guns out there and there's a possibility. They're ready. Why should we not be ready too? Well, especially with these response times. All right, we're gonna get into this clip. We want you guys to check this out. This is a woman who woke up in the middle of the night to 3 armed intruders. Check this out. What did you guys think about that? All right, isn't that crazy?
I think that is absolutely a mind-blowing clip right there.
She was fearless. Why was she fearless, guys? Why do you think she was fearless? Why was she fearless?
Well, she might have had a lot of fear. I mean, I think she had a lot of fear.
She was spraying. I mean,
she had a lot of fear, but she also wanted to live.
She wanted to live, but she was spraying. And if you notice, those guys were shooting back, as they ran away. But she was spraying. That's 1 woman versus 3 guys. So that should give you a little bit of
what I thought
incentive.
about, Bard, when I was watching that clip? A couple of years ago, and I think Clint Eastwood made a movie about this. You had the American Marines or soldiers that were on that train in Paris or somewhere in Europe, and there were terrorists on there. They started to take control of the train, and then they basically jumped them. And they said, you know what? If we're going to die, we're not going to die laying down. We're just going to go for it.
We're going to live. And that's my mentality.
And that, in a post 9/11 world, we saw what happened over there. And, if you're going to go out, you may as well go out fighting.
You got to try. I mean, you literally have to try. It's either you try or you just become a victim. Now, I don't have any video queued up for this, but I'll tell you about some of the other video. Let me go through some more scenarios. Having a dog is a great idea, even if you have a gun. Why? It's an early warning system. And a dog making all that noise sometimes deters people from wanting to come in at all. So it's a great way.
Even a Chihuahua.
Even a Chihuahua. And I think even having signs, like there are people who have signs like armed, but guess what? Those work sometimes in the opposite way.
I would probably put up, you have a dog, that's probably the best.
That's probably the best one.
The best one.
I've heard that when people put up gun owner and this and that, and you advertise you have guns in your house, guess what happens? Criminals stake out your house. As soon as you leave, they break in and they steal your guns.
Yep.
So you might not want to put that. Maybe the dogs, that's a good idea, but if you put that you're armed and all this stuff, it's a
bad idea.
Now the job is, I need to get these guns.
Yeah.
And criminals love guns that don't belong to them, that aren't registered to them. So I think that's something you guys got to keep in mind. All right, so I want to give you guys Let's do another question here. This is a question that we had. Should gun manufacturers be responsible for gun crimes? What do you guys think about that? And give us your perspective in the comments. We're going to get into it now. What do you think, Seiji?
Oh, I think it's completely ridiculous that gun manufacturers would be held responsible for what happens with the gun once it's purchased. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Was it Hillary Clinton at the time, Senator Clinton, who proposed that? Was it she that proposed that? I think I've heard her pushing for that. Now, I really don't care about politics either way. I'm right down the middle on neither side. 2016 voted Green Party. I really don't care. I'm pretty apathetic. I just want them to stay out of my business. Leave me alone. Leave my rights alone. But
I mean, I think that if you're looking at it where a gun manufacturer is held responsible for a mass shooter killing a bunch of innocent people, then people all across the world, let's say in Iraq, for example, should be able to sue the United States military
ding, 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 ding. Good point.
For a bunch of innocent Iraqi or Afghani or other children or innocent people that are just collateral damage.
Well, not even just the military.
Yeah, well, of anything.
They should be able to sue Raytheon and Boeing for providing the jets and the equipment, and they should be able to sue the people who own who manufacture the carbines.
Yeah.
That the U.S. military is using for war. So does that logic make sense to you guys, that someone should be able to sue a gun manufacturer for someone's choice? Now let's follow that logic down. Let's use another example. Someone uses a knife in a murder. Should like, for instance, right now, because there are no guns in England, only the criminals have guns. Surprise, surprise. I have a cousin who lives in England, and he was telling me about this. The knife attacks are really, really, really bad.
It's because they have such strict gun laws.
Strict gun laws.
So just to give you an idea on this perspective of gun laws in the UK versus in the United States, and whether or not having guns actually deter robberies. 13% of robberies in the United States happen when homeowners are home. Whereas in the UK, 40% of robberies happen when people are at home. And what
They have no fear.
Thomas Sowell, the great sociologist and professor from Harvard, has said that a lot of that is attributed to whether or not the criminals are afraid of the homeowners.
Right, and I got a story for you guys. I ran actually through a guy that I knew. I needed him to help me out with something. He was a mechanic. This is like over 10 years ago. Met him a super long time ago, and he kept company with people who were less than, desirable. So this guy there's another guy that had actually been to jail, and I was actually a little bit afraid of this guy because he had been to jail. But as I got comfortable with him, I actually asked him. I said, because he went to jail for like burglary. I actually asked him, would you have broken into houses in this community? And the community I mentioned was a community that was full of like hillbillies and people who are known to have a lot of guns. And he was like, no. He was like, they have guns. They have guns. There's no way I'm going to go over there. And I got a couple more stories, real quick. Texas right now has the lowest amount of home invasions. Want to guess why? They have the most guns in homes in any part of the country. Texas. They have the lowest amount. Criminals aren't going in when there's a bunch of guns.
The other thing I want you guys to all realize, because probably some of you are jumping to then, well, why is the United States such an unsafe place?
And it is. Well,
it is unsafe.
It seems like it is, but it's, go ahead.
Exactly. Statistics can be manipulated in a lot of different ways. If you take out just 5 different metropolitan areas from the United States, we go from being one of the 11th most dangerous with robberies and homicides to being the 188th safest country in the world, with only about 20 countries that are really tiny that are more or that are safer places. So if you remove New York City, Philadelphia, St. Louis, Chicago, and one other place that I can't remember, then the United States jumps all the way up to one of the safest places in the world.
And you know what's incredible about that? If you want to live in the U.S. and let's say you're in the U.S. and you're in one of these cities, move.
Oh, it was Baltimore.
Oh, Baltimore.
So shout out to Kim Klasick over there for what she's talked about and highlighted.
With Baltimore?
With Baltimore, as well as all of those are democratically controlled areas, and they have been for a long time.
Just to throw that in. I mean, and it's unfortunate, but hey, look, honestly, if you want to, like, I don't like all the school shootings. No one does. I think the problem is, you know, we mentioned earlier how there are certain constant variables in life. There will always be crime. There will always be criminals, crime, and there will always be crazy people. The problem is we can be 99% of the country can be law-abiding citizens, and I think we are.
Yep.
I don't know the exact statistics, don't quote me, but I feel like the news does a really good job of amplifying everything and making it seem like it's nationwide. You know, like it's just everywhere you go in America, you're getting shot down. Now, there are a lot of gun crimes. I'm not going to be honest. I'm going to be honest. There are a lot of gun deaths. There are a lot of what they consider mass shootings. I think a mass shooting is anything over 3 people shot. That's a mass shooting, and I think that's fair. But you know, move somewhere that's not failing. Go to another city. Leave Baltimore. Leave Chicago. Whatever, you know, or just be in a safer area. I think people are smart enough to realize that's what you've got to do. You just have to be in a place that's a lot safer. All right, Cole, do you want to get into our top 10?
Yeah.
Or do you want to talk about the business? We can talk about the business stuff real quick.
Oh yeah, we should talk about the business of.
Yeah, so let's see. Can we pull up some of these? Let's go to. Do we have some of these stats here on?
For some reason, it's not going back.
Okay. All right, so let's do this. We're going to talk about the business of. We have some numbers on some of the.
Do guns heal people?
Oh, do guns heal people? All right, you want to play that clip?
So,
all right.
You know, I know we've been talking about a bunch of relatively serious stuff here for a second, but we've got a tiny clip from, again, American Dad that you guys might enjoy. And the question here is, do guns heal people? Okay?
Are they loving instruments of healing?
So check out this clip for a second.
In a gun accident, and he has something to say about it.
Gentlemen, my body is lifeless, but my brain still works. That I want to be a pro-gun spokesman for the NGA.
What?
What's left of my spine tells the whole story. Guns work.
But you were paralyzed by a gun.
No, I was paralyzed by you. This Saturday's the No Child Left Unarmed Jamboree. If you and your daughter perform, you're our new spokesman.
Dad, I'd do anything for you, but this goes against everything I stand for.
I was wrong. I can't make you do this. I know you're only doing this because you blame yourself for hurting me. You would never hurt me. And if you didn't hurt me, that only leaves the gun.
This is my chance to get my job back.
Blood and guts spill out. Grammy's mom could
Dad! Oh my God, he's been shot!
Well, this time when you were shot, see, the second bullet passed through your neck and pushed the first bullet out. You should be completely ambulatory again.
Ah! Doc, your fork has magical powers.
It's the bullet that saved you.
This is great. Without guns, I'd still be in a wheelchair.
You know, I hope you guys found that humorous, but that you could see that.
So guns heal. I mean, that's the.
Stan Smith was miraculously saved while trying to save his daughter.
Wow. Thank God for the Second Amendment.
By that random bullet.
All right, obviously that's a little bit of humor. So we're gonna look at real quick, just for a couple minutes before we get into our top 10. We're gonna take a look at
the profits of gun manufacturers.
Yeah, gun manufacturers profiting. Let me see if I can blow this up here. All right. Anyway, so there are two. Well, let's just go with the top earning company. Who cares about number 2, really? Smith & Wesson. Smith & Wesson obviously selling the most guns, making the most money. In what year is this? 2021, they made record profits. They jumped. I mean, it was ridiculous.
They more than doubled.
They more than doubled. They're at $449 million, and that's insane. I mean, it's great for business. I'm a capitalist. It's great for business, but there's two ways to look at it. More guns has proven in some areas, especially it's more legal guns. That's the key. More legal guns that are safe, that criminals aren't stealing, equals in many cases less crime. But if you're leaving your guns out and you're letting people steal them, well, more illegal guns in a way does equal more crime, as we can see in some of these big cities where guns are legal.
There was a study cited by Thomas Sowell in regards to this topic. There was a county, I think it was Kennesaw County or something in Georgia, where back, I don't know, it must have been 20 years ago or so, they mandated that every head of household was required to have a gun. And what they found in that county specifically is that gun violence or crime, robberies and everything dropped by 89%. 89%.
That's pretty compelling. Let me share, I got a couple quick stories for you real quick. We're talking about, this is the deterrent side of guns. There's a well, we showed you a video, but the deterrent side. So when you look at, for instance, there's a story of this Japanese general. I don't remember his name. I read it in this book. This is a great book if you're interested in Japan. It's called The History of Japan, From Stone Age to Superpower. It's by Henschel Walker. He's a professor out of Toronto, either Toronto or somewhere in Calgary. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, they decimated, us. They caught us by surprise. Some are saying there's some alternate theories. They're saying, oh, the U.S. knew it was going to happen. Blah blah blah. We use it as a pretext for war in Japan. Okay, cool, whatever. But the key is it was well known, according to Henschel Walker. What he's saying is that the Japanese could have pushed into halfway across the United States. That's like literally, if you were to look at Texas, that line. They could have pushed all the way to half of the United States. But when they captured this general and they asked him, hey, how come you didn't continue your attack into the continental United States? He said, well, I lived in the United States when I was going to school. And a lot of Japanese, they lived here at that time and then still live here. But prior to the war, a lot lived here. And then they went back to Japan and built up their country. Built up their economy. He said while he was living here, he realized that everyone had a gun. He was like, people have guns everywhere. And it terrified him, even just living here as a not really a citizen, but as a guest in this country. But even though he had hatred for the United States based on the way, check out the book. I won't spoil it for you. Even though he had that feeling, he had enough fear in him. It was that much of a deterrent, where he decided as a military commander he wasn't going to push into the United States.
Well, you have people like Admiral Yamamoto, who is the chief planner of the attack on Pearl Harbor. He spent a significant amount of time in the United States.
That might be who it is. Yeah.
But
I forgot the name.
He died.
Oh, he died. Okay, I forgot the name.
But it was definitely, I don't know about getting to halfway across the U.S., but there was potentially support for the Japanese in places like San Francisco, and that was where that conversation came up. And he was very clear that they were worried about American citizens continually picking off at them, just like the Americans did during the American Revolutionary War. And they had no expectation that they could ever succeed in
they wouldn't have
in conquering or taking over a significant portion of the United States.
I don't think anyone can. We have far too many guns here. No military, even if China decided to send everybody they had, we have so many guns and the capacity to produce that it's just like, and so many people who are willing to kill people, like willing to kill invaders. We have people who are like, I wish you would. Like, I literally wish you would try.
Bard, I saw Tremors, and some of those guys are just waiting.
They're waiting. I mean, they just like, I wish you would. Like, I got a buddy named Mike, you know, Seiji names Mike, knows Mike as well. And Mike's a gun owner, and Mike said, this is what Mike told me on the phone. He's like, I wish somebody would come in my house. I wish somebody would try that. And it's so true. It's like when you have a willing populace who believes in freedom, and I think that's the symbol of freedom is the gun in America. We're not going to be taken over by some military, and we have our own equipment here, and people are ready to fight and die. They're not going to be slaves to anyone, to any foreign powers.
In other countries where they have disarmed the population, for example, Hitler did that in Germany to the Germans during the 1930s, and eventually he was able to force the entire population, even though it was a minority that were ever Nazis. He forced the entire German population into World War II. And look what that got them. But the point is, at least according to modern examples, where societies have been totally disarmed, it has led to less tolerance, totalitarianism,
despots.
Yeah, and a lot
problem.
more significant problems.
A lot of problems. One more quick, before we move into our top 10, we're going to go into top 10 reasons to be a gun owner. Before we move into that segment, I want to tell you really quickly, just like Georgia, you mentioned how Georgia, I didn't even know about that they were required to have a firearm. It's one of these Scandinavian countries. I want to just say Sweden or Switzerland, one of the two S's. Switzerland may not be Scandinavian, but Sweden is. But one of those countries, by law, I think it's Switzerland, by law, the man of the house is supposed to have a rifle in the home. And this is to produce that same effect that the United States had on Japan. A strong deterrent. All right, guys, this is the end of this segment. We're going to be moving into our top 10 reasons to be a gun owner. We'll be right back in a second.
Okay, we're back. Top 10 reasons to be a gun owner. Number 1.
All right, number 1, guys, to preserve your liberty.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds good to me. I mean, what's wrong with a little liberty? I mean, I think the thing is, here's the thing about this country. We were under the thumb of England, right? We were, 4th of July, we were celebrating freedom from England, freedom from being a colony, a British colony. And no one wants to go back to that. So, yes, we want to have our guns to protect us from that. But guess what? There are other powers that are more powerful than England now who are very interested in taking over or attacking the United States. China being one of the number 1 threats, who can really wage war against us. But anyway.
But it's most important, just so you realize, that when we're talking about preserve your liberty, preserve your liberties, preserve your liberty from your neighbor, as well as governmental overreach.
Tyrannical governments.
Yep. So number 2, protect your life and the life of your family.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't care about the life of your family, I mean, I don't know. If you're willing to sacrifice your family to make some political point, like, oh, this is my political stance.
Well, and
I don't know how to help you. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
It seemed like some of the people we interviewed were kind of willing to sacrifice their family for their
political stances.
Yeah, and that's up to them. That wouldn't work for me.
Yeah, we had one guy. We got about 30 seconds left for this bullet point. We had one guy who agreed that having a firearm would make the most sense, but then he doubled back because he hurt himself, and he's like, "Wait a minute, no, this is my political position. I need to support my political position." If you're willing to put your political position over your own life or your family, you're crazy.
Well, he liked guns, but it was just for target shooting.
Yeah,
he
just for
wasn't
target
willing
shooting.
to use his gun to defend himself.
So we can use a gun for target shooting, but when someone comes in your house and they're trying to murder you or your family or rape your wife in front of you or whatever, that's not okay. That's not an okay way. But we can call the police to kill them.
Yeah.
Makes no sense. I don't know how people rationalize that. Anyway, let's move on. Number 3. All right.
Yeah.
All right, that's me.
It's your right.
All right, it's yours. All right, it's your right. So,
You know, it's your right. People died for it. The founding fathers, when they were having these debates about the Bill of Rights and whether or not to even create this foundational document to the United States, the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. These were foundational pieces. They established that right, and it is for us to defend this last best beacon of light, as a paraphrase of what Ronald Reagan said, and that's what the United States is.
and I got a quick comment before we move on to number 4. Not only is it your right, but if you take away one of those, it's like a Jenga.
Yep.
You pull out one of those, any of those Bill of Rights, that's the foundation of the Jenga. You pull any of them away, it becomes very unstable and it could all topple. And it most likely will topple. Because if you can take that away, they can take away other rights. All right,
Yeah.
Number 4.
Go for it.
Guns keep America safer. We mentioned what we see in Texas.
Yeah.
But the only problem is, I mean, not to push back against that too much, but it is proven if you're going to have guns, because we are going to have our Bill of Rights, that's not going anywhere. As long as that's in place and as long as crazy people in place, we will have gun crime. But at the same time, the more guns, it's proving that it's safer in certain communities, because when criminals know that there's more guns and there's guns in these communities, they don't do crime or they stay out of your house.
Well,
It's a deterrent.
I want to put this in perspective for you guys, right? When we look at this, I think the Department of Education gets something like $83 billion a year, right? And one of the things that Vivek Ramaswamy, one of the people running for president, he's proposed basically getting rid of the Department of Education.
I've heard that, yeah.
And rehiring a whole bunch of police officers and other people to protect American public schools. You know, just last week we gave $400 billion to Zelensky in the Ukraine. So if we're willing to protect Ukrainian kids, why can't we protect American kids? I mean, that just seems like
Great
it makes
point.
sense. Whether you're on the right or on the left,
Yeah.
we should be able to agree that our kids are more important than other people are on the other side of the planet.
I get it. Let's go on to the next one. I get it. Number
Yeah.
5.
More guns equal less crime. And this, we cited Georgia, where they had said that head of households should have a weapon, and the robberies dropped by 89%. There are other examples, anecdotal, where, you know, if you assume that there's a whole bunch of families with weapons that are enabled to use them to protect themselves, people tend to, or criminals tend to avoid those neighborhoods.
Yeah, it's statistics. You know, I'll be honest. The idea of everyone having a gun, including crazy people, it does kind of unnerve me a little bit. But at the same time, I feel good that people are protected in their homes and we don't have to rely on 911. And just to kind of add a little bit more context to number 4, because number 4 and number 5, guns keep America safer, and number 4 keeps America safer in terms of like military, okay? And us being able to back up the military. Consider that point if it's needed. And what the Japanese general said, we mentioned earlier, in how it provided a deterrent for even foreign militaries, foreign potential occupiers. All right, let's move on. Number 6.
Number 6, criminals will never give up their guns.
And that is a great reason to be a gun owner. And why would they? And criminals are after your guns. They're trying to steal your guns because they want a gun that they can commit a crime with that doesn't go back to them.
And that's the thing, you know, you had places like Brazil that had very strict gun laws, Mexico that has very strict gun laws, and fortunately you had leaders like Jair Bolsonaro from Brazil who loosened up the gun laws and made it much easier for people to protect themselves. And that's the same thing in the United States. You always have the worst elements in society that are going to own and keep their weapons.
It's just a fact. I mean, we'll never have a perfect society. We mentioned earlier how different countries that remove guns, they have horrible knife crimes. Tons of people being stabbed. I mean, you want to be stabbed to death or shot?
Or look
literally,
at it.
it's take your
You
pick.
give up your gun and you end up with Adolf Hitler. I mean,
Right, there's trade-offs. You're not going to get a perfect world. Let me give you another example. There were some mass stabbings in China.
yeah.
I don't know if you guys remember that. There was I think one was 26 people stabbed by one person.
I think it was more than that. I mean,
They had
it
a
was
mass
crazy.
stabbing. They had multiple people with knives stabbing people.
Yeah.
And I mean, guys, and if I'm telling you, if it's not guns, it's knives. If it's not knives, it's bombs.
Yeah.
And I don't really want bombs.
No.
We saw what happened in Iraq with all the suicide bombers. It's nuts. All right, let's move on. Number 7, you could be a responsible, law-abiding citizen. All right, what do you think about that?
Well, I think that, if you are a gun owner, it is being responsible because you're taking care of yourself. You're helping your neighborhood because I think it does make everyone else safer. I truly believe that.
Right, and we do have laws that state if you see someone else their life being threatened, you can shoot to kill. So, and if you're against guns, I mean, think about this. Let's say there's a mass shooting happened. There was a mass shooting the other day that was stopped by a gun owner. The gun owner pulled out the gun and shot the mass shooter, and it was over because the police weren't there. We can't, this isn't an indictment against the police. We can't blame the police. They can't be everywhere at the same time, and the response times sometimes are atrocious. So we have to keep in mind, it's better, sometimes to have that element of surprise. And when criminals know there's a possibility that they can't do what they want to do, sometimes they don't do the crime at all.
Yep. Okay. Number 8.
Number 8,
Feed your family.
feed your family. All right, where are these people living?
There's a lot of people in rural areas that not only enjoy hunting just for the sport of it, but they actually enjoy eating the meat.
They eat it.
And, I'm totally vegetarian, and I think you are as well.
vegetarian.
But, if you want to help with reducing the deer population, which is much needed,
Right.
then that's totally valid.
Yeah, there are people, like when I go to the beach, I'm at the beach, I don't know, maybe once a week. I used to go a couple times a week. I see people fishing. They fish to live. They're catching fish to go home and eat. People do the same thing with guns. They hunt to live. And the thing is, they have licenses and they put this meat away and they eat it. And they look at it as a legit way to feed their family. So, not mad at them.
I actually respect people who hunt, kill their own meat, and then eat it, because there's a lot of people who think that you just get meat from the supermarket.
Right.
And at the end of the day, there is an animal that's dying and it has to get prepared. And I respect those people for being so committed to what they want to eat that they're going to put in that much work.
Definitely.
It's good.
All right, number 9, teach firearm safety and pass on the tradition of firearm ownership to the next generation. So this kind of goes back into the legal, Second Amendment, the tradition, the pride in knowing that we have these rights. At one point, I want to say this was happening in Germany. I read this article a long time ago. I don't know if you guys remember the migrant crisis. Because the United States unfortunately invaded Afghanistan, a lot of Afghanis, the Germans were bringing them in. They were taking the refugees. You remember that? That was a few years ago. So, unfortunately, in some cultures that they have different religious backgrounds that are a little bit more patriarchal, male-dominated, they don't respect women as much. And what was happening was a lot of the migrants were sexually assaulting the women in Germany. And there was one point where the German women were actually calling for a legalization of more guns. They wanted guns so they could protect themselves.
That makes sense. Or your government just checks who they're letting into the country.
You could do that. Or you could do that. Right.
Both could work.
Yeah, both could work, but it was going to take a generation to bring the Afghan refugee males up to speed with how to treat women and how to deal with women in the West. And until then, the women needed the great equalizer, and that takes the form of a gun, because they were tired of being raped, and they shouldn't be raped. And and they wanted to kill these guys who were trying to break into their homes because they saw them as victims.
That seems totally legitimate. I don't know about you.
I don't know. Seems fair to me. Seems fair to me. All right, and our last one. Go ahead and get
Guns help increase your sense of responsibility, discipline, concentration, and confidence. I look at it from this perspective. God created us with a spirit to live free lives, to be the best we can be, not to live in fear. And if a weapon will help you do that, I think that's totally legitimate.
Yeah, I think owning a gun is a lot of responsibility. Like the first woman we interviewed, she talked about the ownership of it, the maintaining, the keeping of it, the safety around kids, and putting it together. It's a lot of responsibility, and I think the only people, gun owners understand this, and police officers understand this, the responsibility, and people who've been in the military, they understand this. It involves you more in society, and it just makes you more aware and cognizant of your role and your responsibility and everything. It just helps you be a better, in many ways, like a better citizen. You're right. It just helps, and it helps with just more responsible, more disciplined, and it definitely helps out with those things, because it just, you're more aware and cognizant of what you need to do to be safer and what's needed. Anyway, guys, that is the end of our top 10. You got any comments on that?
No.
Before we go? That's the end of our top 10. We are going to move into our Daily Stupid.
How dare you!
Okay, we're back with our Daily Stupid. Bard, what do you got?
All right, so my Daily Stupid is for a Japanese guy. I think his name is Toko, T-O-C-O. I don't know if you can see this, but I'll hold this up for you. You see that collie, that dog? Yeah, that's actually something he had made for him. It's a suit that he can put on so he could act like a dog. I saw the video. There was this woman was petting him, and oh, good dog.
And she walks him on the street.
She's walking him, and he's all walking all weird. It's all and dogs were approaching him, and the dogs were. It was just weird. He spent $22,000. I don't know what. About $20,000 U.S. money.
2 million yen.
To put on a dog suit, and to me, this is just freaky, weird. I don't know, it's just a little bit too much for me. I don't know, but I think that's my Daily Stupid. Why would you spend that much money to look like a dog? That's retarded. Anyway, what do you think? What's your Daily Stupid? Or
my Daily Stupid is the Japanese guy. He says that he doesn't want to show his face because he's embarrassed about people.
Of course.
I would be embarrassed about that too. So you know what? Please keep hidden, because you really are a weirdo.
It's completely weird. I mean, it's absolutely stupid, man.
But yeah, for my Daily Stupid, it's my normal punching bag, and that is Hunter Biden.
What's he up to?
Well, it was actually not Hunter Biden, but it's a Hunter Biden related story where Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, would not answer any questions about him because, according to her, he is a private citizen. He's a private citizen with the motorcade, but he is a private citizen, so she couldn't answer any questions about his...
He's got a motorcade?
Well,
interesting.
With his plea bargain.
Wow, so private citizen who's doing business with his dad in Ukraine, but he's a private citizen, so we can't talk about him.
But going back to an earlier Daily Stupid, President Biden finally did acknowledge Hunter Biden's latest child with, or maybe not his latest child, but one of his grandchildren.
Oh, he admitted it?
Yeah, he finally admitted it last week because he was getting taking a lot of flack.
Yeah, you're basically turning into, you're turning the White House into a hood, basically. You're denying your kids and your grandkids. That's crazy.
Well, in Hunter Biden's defense, he said he didn't even remember it because he was drugged up at the time, so he didn't remember the encounter.
That I believe. That I believe. All
Anyways,
right.
that wraps up our Daily Stupid. Thank you so much for tuning into the Seiji Bart podcast.
There it is, guys. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe. Please share the podcast. And as always, we'll see you in the next one. Thank you.